So I just got back from a very heavy breakfast. Let's just call it a country breakfast. Included a lot of carbs and things I shouldn't. Well, I don't know if the word is I shouldn't. I ate this heavy breakfast: banana bread, biscuits, gravy, all that good stuff because um, I have to fast for 24 hours. They're going to stick a tube up my butt to see if I have cancer. This is something that the colon expand the colon, what is it called? The colonoscopy. No, not ski. It's not a Russian thing. The colonoscopy. Anyway, uh, it's something that men are supposed to do in their 40s. I've never done it. I'm approaching 50. And so my doctor is waving it in my face and saying, you need to get this done now. I didn't know this, but just a reminder to you, uh, it's like the number one, I think it's the number one way that specifically men die, colon cancer. So anyway, uh, just reminding you. And as I was having breakfast, I was reading this article uh, called "The Molecule of More," and this is what this episode's about. This article, let me just give credit real quick. This article was written by, uh, it was published in the Good Men Project. And let me see who it was written by. Jed Diamond, PhD. What's interesting about this article is it talks about love, behaviors of love through the door of dopamine, through chemicals. And dopamine is produced, and I think a lot of people who tend to be addicted to dopamine, like myself, is produced more from the chase than actual love. And this is really interesting because it made me think about, you read something that kind of lands for you, and then of course you instantly play back your entire life like a quick movie montage, and you start connecting dots. And I remember when I was screenwriting, this has nothing to do with love, but it does have to do with my patterns. When I was writing, I got my first agent, and she was with kind of a, like she was like with a boutique agency, and we were working, and a fancier agent approached me, a bigger agent approached me, a really big agent, like one of the top three. And we were about to go out with the script, and I decided to go with a bigger agent. And I remember her saying to me, John, you just keep chasing after the better thing. You just want designer. And I felt really bad, but it was like a career choice. And I felt like at the time I just needed to go with someone bigger because there was a bigger chance of a sale. I was very desperate at the time. I didn't have a career. My marriage was falling apart. Anyway, no excuses. I wasn't loyal to my first agent, even though it was, the relationship was new. But when she pointed that out, I was like, oh, maybe she's right. Maybe I keep chasing or keep going after bigger, better, fancier. Like maybe I have this pattern of that. She used the word designer, right? Like she was with a boutique agency. Now you're going for the fancy designer brand. And I wonder if I'm like that with love, because according to this article, dopamine is produced more in the chase. So many people who are on a high when they're dating and chasing, and of course getting the shots from connection, chemistry, and the chase and the excitement and all the what ifs, right? Then they get into a relationship, and it's not as sexy, or after that honeymoon period, and then there's less dopamine produced, and then maybe they get bored, or maybe they decide that this isn't the one, or they and the boredom coming from lack of dopamine, not a lack of love, and then being fast to label the love, to exit, to leave. and stamping that as, you know, not the one or lacking chemistry. Um, I don't know. Can you relate to this? I've heard many stories like this, you know, and when I just read this article, I thought to myself, wow, a lot of this may be chemicals. You know, a lot of this may be stuff that's happening in the brain, that is legit, that is real. The other thing I think is interesting is when dopamine's produced, the love chemicals, serotonin, oxytocin. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Serotonin. Sorry, serotonin, oxytocin, and endorphins. Uh, these are called the here and now chemicals, which I love because they snap you out from the what ifs, right? Like, what if I could have that? And the dopamine and chemicals that produces, um, these other chemicals, you feel good in the what is. And so when dopamine is produced, these chemicals lower, right? It's almost like dopamine hijacks that space, preventing the what is chemicals, which sucks because, you know, if you talk about unhealthy patterns and trying to correct them, it would be better if the dopamine gets produced, and then before you get out of control, before you leave relationships or you start you know, tripping in your head and feeding your cognitive distortions and what is not truth, the serotonin, oxytocin, and endorphins should kick in. They should come to battle, right? uh, and fight off the dopamine. So then you go from what is to what, you go from what if to what is, and then you're like, oh shit, I'm daydreaming, I'm fantasizing, I need to snap back to reality. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. And what happens is, according to this article, um, serotonin, the what is chemicals slowly decrease and fade as dopamine hijacks this crazy love bus. And now you're spinning in your head. Now you're questioning the relationship. Now you're drifting. Now you're looking at other people and craving the chase. Anyway, I don't know if you can relate to this. I'm sure if you can't, you know people or you've been with people that have this pattern. And as I think about myself, I can relate to it. I don't know if it's so strong now today, especially at my age and being in a monogamous relationship for 5 years and having a daughter, where um, I don't know if I would act on it. Like, I think I could see the behavior and stop the bus before I could be Keanu Reeves in Speed before the bomb goes off. I could definitely stop the bus more so now than if I was in my 20s, where it was all about chasing. It was all about getting that dopamine high, you know. But I really find this fascinating because we don't think about the chemicals. We don't think about what's happening in our brain that is activating or that is creating this type of behavior. And so it's really interesting. The other part of this is, okay, so what do we do about it? You know, what do we do if dopamine is hijacking our brain and we are living in what ifs instead of what is? What is the prescription for this? And I know it's not a sexy prescription, it's kind of an obvious one, but it is the prescription, and that is to put more weight on what is. That is to intentionally be aware of your drift, your spinning, your fantasy, and then come back to what is. You know, and you can do this through mindfulness. You can do this through breath. You can do this through grounding yourself. You could do it in any way that you want. Do it using a motorcycle. Do it through fitness. I don't know. But coming back to what is, coming back to what you have and appreciating and leaning into that, feeding it, expanding that instead of neglecting that and fantasizing about what something could be or who something could be or what you could have. I think it's harder today than any time before. I've been around since 1973 when you were just an idea. And I think it's in my entire life, it, these days, it's the hardest to be in the present, I think. Even though that message is the loudest, it's also the hardest because of social media. I mean, when you're scrolling, you're just flooded with like beautiful people, half naked people, fancy cars. Man, I mean, of course, it depends on, you can curate your feed on what your interests are, but still, all that shit leaks out. It comes. So on any social media platform, you're getting a lot of shiny things dangled in your face, and that definitely does not help. Back in the 80s, when there was no social media, you would see like beautiful people or movie stars or mansions and all that, and you would know that that's not real because there was so much distance, right? They weren't your neighbors. They were on the big screen. You bought tickets to the show. So a movie star is it's like they live on a different planet, right? These days, celebrity is dead in that the movie star is your neighbor, and because of social media and all the fancy stuff happening, um, it's now it's now come home, and so I think it's really hard to take a breath, um, and try to live in what is and not in what ifs. I know it's really hard for me. Bringing it back to love and relationships, uh, the last piece I want to talk about is when I was reading this article, it made me think about the book that we just wrote. It's Not Me, It's You. It's out in a week. By the time you hear this, it will be out wide. And in this book, we talk about we, as in my partner and I, Vanessa Bennett, the Coda Yoda on TikTok. She specializes in codependency. Uh, we talk about finding beauty in the contrast. And I think that's another way to do it in relationships because when Vanessa and I got together, it was rocky. I was ambivalent. I was trying to be, quote unquote, to use my word, single on purpose. I was trying to sow my oats. I knew that whoever I found next was going to be the one that I maybe spend the rest of my life with, and build something lasting and sustainable and possibly have kids and all that. So I knew the picket fence was coming and that would come with who I dated next. So I didn't really want to be in a relationship. And then, of course, when you don't want to be in something, that's when the universe drops someone in front of you. And Vanessa and I met on a blind date from through a mutual friend. And then I was like scared and I was unsure. I was like, do I do this? Do I not? Also, it wasn't like the lightning in the bottle. It was more like peeling an onion. There were layers. And yeah. And so I was very confused. And that confusion, of course, didn't go well with her. And she was basically shit or get off the pot. And so we took a break for a couple weeks. And today, anyway, wait. The reason why I'm saying that is because there was also a lot of contrast, right? Vanessa and I are very different people. We love differently. We have different love languages. We have different attachment styles. We have different senses of humor. Everything. So, of course, there's overlap, in a lot of things, but generally, we are different. There's a lot of differences as well, and so. Um, there was resistance because of that. I judged it, I labeled it, and what's been helpful, and I think why we are still together, is because I was able to see beauty in the contrast. I was able to not only accept our differences, but to embrace and see beauty in them. And by doing so, I went from the dopamine, which is the what ifs, to the love drugs, what is. And I think that can be a great practice is whether you're with your partner, or I mean, you could do this in any relationship, not just in romantic, but uh, try to see the beauty in the differences in your relationship or relationships, instead of seeing the differences as crowbars, or labeling them as that you're not meant to be with this person, whether it's a friendship or romantically or whatever. But try to see the beauty. You know where it's going to be the hardest is with family. It's gonna be really hard to see the beauty and the contrast when it comes to um, your cousins or your parents or people also from a different generation. But I'm telling you, this is how you, or one of the ways that you can be more present and fire off love, the love drugs. The hold on, here it is: oxytocin, endorphins, and serotonin. And that shit is real. I just want to end with this. My daughter, I've never had a child before. If my daughter looks at me and says something like "I love you," because she's talking now, or "I miss you," or she said, like "Dad, you're my favorite," or something like that, or if I'm hugging her and I can feel her hugging me back, I get a shot. I get a high off because those that produces the love drugs, right? That produces um, the oxytocin, especially, and the endorphins and serotonin. And I'm telling you, the high I get from that, uh, because I've never had a child before, so these are new experiences for me. That shot, I swear, is it floods me. It floods. I could hold my daughter, whether we are cuddling or dancing, um, for hours, and part of that is it's that love drug that is flooding my brain. It's very different than dopamine, right? The chasing drug, the what if drug. And I'm really glad that with my daughter, it's the what is drug that is firing on all cylinders and keeping me very present. Anyway, thank you for listening. Little housekeeping. Our book drops by the time you hear this. It's why. Check it out. It's not me, it's you. It's my first relationship book and the first book that I have co authored with someone else. And because she happens to also be a therapist, it was terrifying to write because she checked me on my shit. It was hard to write because I had to be honest about my shortcomings. But it's a really from what we are hearing, it's a really good read, and people are enjoying it. It's what people are. Someone said it's the what's the like the Thanksgiving basket of relationships, meaning we cover all the important things. It's the we cover all the primary colors when it comes to how to build legs in a relationship, but also talk about our shortcomings. And I think it's important as therapists. And for me, the tone of this book is just as important, if not more, than the content of the book. And the tone is something that I've been, it's a flag I've been waving since 2010. And that therapists are human and we have problems and we're not perfect. And so we wanted to come with you instead of at you. And finally, I just launched TAT Text Plus, which means I'm giving you exclusive audio. We have international numbers. We have video. We have everything I finally wanted. So it's mental programming straight through SMS, straight through texting you. And people are really enjoying it. So you can check that out as well. So for the price of one lunch a month, you can get this in your phone. Thank you for listening. Be well.